It was hardly even a matter of whether Kelvin Herrera would be traded, the question was whether he'd get the chance to remain a closer once moved this summer. It turned out the answer was no, though with a caveat. The Nationals landed the free agent to be on Monday, sending the Royals 3 prospects for his services. It seemed like a light return for Kansas City. There will be several other quality relievers available this summer, but everyone is going to want them, too. The Dodgers, Red Sox, Angels and others all should have been in on this, but maybe Dayton Moore just thinks better of the prospects he's getting from Washington than practically anyone else does. 17-year-old right-hander Yohanser Marel appears to be a real talent, though he wasn't looked at as a big get when he signed last year. The 2 hitters acquired had both been disappointments in the Nationals system. Kelvin Gutierrez is a glove-first third baseman with 12 homers in 1,741 at-bats as a minor leaguer. 5 of those have come this year, but he still has a modest .274, .321, .391 line as a 23-year-old in AA. Blake Perkins, 21, has hit .239, .332, .322 since being drafted in the second round in 2015. He has plenty of speed and can go get the ball in center, but he strikes out a lot and doesn't figure to add much power. Neither guy currently predicts as a future regular. Herrera had bounced back from the forearm issues he experienced in the second half of last year to post a 1.05 ERA in 25 2/3 innings so far this year. With a career 2.75 ERA, he has about as strong of a track record as any reliever who was going to come up in trade, and despite last year's brief absences, he's made at least 59 appearances 6 years running. In Washington, he'll serve as a setup man in front of Sean Doolittle. Given Doolittle's injury history, Herrera would still seem to be worth owning in all but the shallowest of leagues. He'll keep helping in ERA and WHIP, and he'll probably get a handful of saves. As for the Royals' closer situation, things could get ugly. Brandon Maurer was supposed to be the number 2 man in their pen this year, but he's allowed 8 runs and 4 homers in 5 1/3 innings. It seemed like he might have figured things out in AAA. He allowed just an unearned run in his final 12 2/3 innings before being recalled last week, but in his second appearance back Sunday, he failed to retire any of the 3 batters he faced. He's still the reliever most capable of running away with a job. For the short term, though, Kevin McCarthy probably rates as the favorite for saves. He's a ground ball pitcher with limited strikeout ability and big issues against lefties, so he fits far better as more of a matchup guy for the long haul. Keep an eye on Wiley Peralta and Justin Grimm. Neither looks like a very good bet at the moment, but anyone who runs off a few good outings in a row will be a threat for saves in Kansas City. American League notes Jorge Soler had definitely slowed down since his big first 6 weeks, but it's still disappointing to see him go down for at least a month after suffering a fractured toe running the bases. The Royals could have given Frank Schwindel a chance to replace him in the DH spot, but they opted for Royale Herrera and Adalberto Mondesi instead. It likely factored into their thinking that Jorge Bonifacio is eligible to return from his PED suspension on June 27. Mondesi should get a look as the everyday shortstop, but since these are the Royals, he's being penciled in as a part-timer for now. I don't know if Mondesi is much better than Alcides Escobar, but I don't see how he could be any worse, and it's not like the Royals are trying to salvage their place in the standings. Mondesi might have some value in deeper mixed leagues if he gets to play regularly, but he's just an AL-only guy now. Herrera, who was recently picked up on waivers from the Reds, has versatility and the ability to switch hit in his favor, but his bat will probably limit him to being a 25th man on a good team. So, the Orioles decided that, since they're losing 100 games regardless, it makes more sense to stop Chance Sisco's service time clock than to have him continue to learn in the majors, because that's certainly what it looks like. Sisco wasn't lighting it up by hitting .218, .340, .328 in 119 at-bats, but he was hardly the Orioles' biggest problem. He had a higher ops than Jonathan Scoop, Trey Mancini and Chris Davis. His 0.5 RWAR was the third highest on the team for a position player behind Manny Machado and Craig Gentry. Of course, WAR doesn't do much to capture a catcher's defensive value, and Sisco has some things to work on there. It just seemed like it made a lot more sense for him to work on those in Baltimore. The Orioles must think there's more value to be gained from having him eligible for free agency after 2024 instead of 2023. The Orioles could have committed to more of a shake-up than just benching Davis and demoting Cisco. One option would be to turn to Drew Dosh at third base. He's a fringy prospect, but HES hitting .287, .352, .443 in AAA, and HES better defensively than Danny Valencia, as low of a bar as that might be. They could also try Mike Yastrzemski in the outfield. Carl's grandson has hit .265, .375, .480 in 102 at-bats since moving back up to AAA. He's not a prospect at age 27, but he couldn't really be any worse than Mancini and Joey Rickard have been. Still, it seemed they were more interested in waiting for Steve Wilkerson, who was called up Tuesday after hitting .290, .362, .500 for Norfolk in 16 games since returning from a 50-game amphetamines suspension. The 26-year-old switch-hitting utility-man projects as a quality bench player going forward, but HES someone who will probably be close to an everyday guy for the Orioles in the second half. Sadly unmentioned here is top prospect Austin Hayes, who was hitting just .224, .259, .374 in Double-A before going down with an ankle injury last month. Although whatever it was that happened off the field Monday night might have changed things, Round Oda was slated to remain the Rangers' primary second baseman with Elvis Andrus back. It'd seem to be at least as much about as his contract as his somewhat improved play. HES hit .253, .333, .368 since May 21. It's still bizarre to see him hitting for so little power. If one is looking for encouraging signs, his line drive rate is well up and his ground ball rate well down this month. His exit velocity on flies and liners has been decent, right around the 50th percentile among regulars. Most of the players around him are closer to 10 homers than 1. I still think the power will come around, even if his batting average remains a problem. Stolen bases are an issue, though. It looked like a good bet that he'd get his 15 steals again this year, but after opening the year 1 for 6, things are bleak there. With no steals and no batting average, it barely seems worth it to wait for his power to come around, given that the Rangers intend to find plenty of playing time for both Oda and Jurickson Profar. It's surprising that they're keeping Isiah Kiner-Falefa around, especially considering that they want him to work more behind the plate. The Rangers seem really impressed with Kiner-Falefa, even though his offensive numbers .244, .321, .345 in 197 AB are uninspiring, and there's little in his minor league track record to suggest he'll get a whole lot better. Catching does seem like his best bet for a substantial major league career. He started logging time behind the plate in 2016 and has started 67 minor league games there since. He could end up as a really fun utility man if he can serve as a backup catcher while remaining above average throughout the infield. While it was never going to happen, the Angels would have been better off just releasing Albert Pujols and keeping C.J. Cron last winter. Now, though, they might have a player better than both in AAA in the form of 2016 first-round pick Matt Tess. Tess is hitting .313, .359, .573 with 5 homers and just 12 strikeouts in 22 games since moving up to Salt Lake. That's a great place for offense, of course, and Tess might not be ready quite yet. Sometimes, though, I do ponder exactly what it would take for the Angels to just bail on Pujols. He has 40 RBI in 66 games this year, which is a function of him batting cleanup every day but also of improved production with wrist again. He has been clutch in recent years, which just makes me wonder why he can't be as productive with none on as he is with Mike Trout leaning off second. He's still murder on the bottom half of the Angels lineup since last year. He has a .286 OBP and HES been driven in a total of 46 times in 215 games. John Lamb's AAA numbers were impressive enough that I gave some thought to putting him in the June rankings, even though it was far from apparent that he might get an opportunity anytime soon. However, he was an obvious call-up for the Angels when Garrett Richards' hamstring and Nick Trippiano's shoulder joined Shohei Ohtani, not to mention Matt Shoemaker and J.C. Ramirez on the DL last week. Lamb pitched 5 innings of 2-run ball against the A's in his Halos debut Saturday, though both runs did come on homers. Never a hard thrower, Lamb works at 90 miles per hour with his fastball and tends to rely on his cutter and changeup. It's a good combination for limiting the damage against righties, but he still needs the curve against lefties, and HES never been very consistent with it. I like him as an AL-only starter for however long HES in the Angels rotation. There might be some potential in mixed leagues, too. The front office and field staffs are long overhauled, but the Twins' embarrassing history with young power hitters added another chapter when Miguel Sano was optioned to Single-A last week. I don't see how Sano's swing is in need of an overhaul. He just has to play better, and that very likely would have happened if he were simply left alone. On the other hand, I have no sympathy for Sano. I don't think HES deserved to be called fat, as fans and media alike have done, but it also seems like HES never shown much interest in playing up to his potential. The Twins' maneuver here might have been both unnecessary for the team and still the best thing for Sano's career. It just seems likely that if Sano does have some all-stars in his future, it won't be Minnesota that benefits. Avisail Garcia is finally set to rejoin the White Sox after missing nearly 2 months with a severe hamstring strain. It's good news, but it's worth remembering that Garcia was terrible before going down, hitting just 1 homer and posting a 17/0 KBB ratio in 76 plate appearances. While it's probably worth trying him again in mixed leagues, the leash should be pretty short. The White Sox figure to demote Charlie Tilson or designate Trace Thompson for assignment in order to make room for Garcia. National League notes things are going well enough for the Braves that they were able to drop Brandon McCarthy from the rotation, even though had been quite solid of late. 4.05 ERA, 36ths ratio over 33 and a third IP in his last 6 starts. It'd still take McCarthy over Julio Teheran, though Teheran's velocity has come back up some of late. Still, it's not like McCarthy was going to throw 180 innings this year anyway. As for Aníbal Sánchez, there's little to suggest this is likely to hold up. Going into the year, there was still reason to think he could miss enough bats to be an adequate bottom-of-the-rotation guy. Still, his strikeout rate isn't any better than expected, and his velocity has slipped some. It's encouraging that his ground ball rate is up, but HES still been just average there. He currently has a 4.16 FIP to go along with his 1.93 ERA, and even though the Braves' defense has been pretty great, I wouldn't expect a sub 4.00 ERA going forward. Young-Ho Kang struggled in his first few games for Triple-A Indianapolis, at which point the Pirates decided to take him off the restricted list and officially optioned him to the minors rather than simply bring him back to the majors. They still seem rather encouraged with his progress overall, though HES gone 8 games without a homer after hitting 3 in his first 5 games for High-A Bradenton. It still seems likely that the Pirates will give Kang a chance, and at this point, it'd almost certainly have to come at Josh Bell's expense. Colin Moran has been quite a bit more productive than Bell and likely would play better defense at first base, too. I like Bell and was rather fond of him as a later corner option this year given his status as the cleanup hitter in a top-heavy Pirates lineup. While HES been shuffled down recently, he still leads the Pirates with 36 RBI, even though he has just 4 homers and a .381 slugging percentage. Bell's strikeout rate is better than the league's, and his exit velocity numbers are actually a little stronger than last year's, when he hit 26 homers. For some reason, though, HES homered on just 6% of his fly balls, compared to 19% last year. I still project him as an above-average hitter going forward. He's probably going to have to get to his numbers up in a hurry, though. Brad Miller got hurt again early and struggled for most of April, but he was hitting .281, .341, .482 in his last 35 games when the Rays made the surprising decision to designate him for assignment earlier this month. The even bigger surprise came 3 days later, when Miller found himself back in the minors upon being traded to the Brewers. Miller has usually been a frustrating player in his major league career. He showed his ability by hitting 30 homers for Tampa Bay in 2016, but HES never really found a position. HES struggled against lefties and HES always had issues hitting .4 average. The interesting thing about Miller's defense is that helps grade it out quite a bit better at the tougher positions of shortstop and second base than he has when tried in the outfield or at first base. The eye test has never been kind to him anywhere, but his numbers in the middle infield are just a little below average. The Brewers obviously noticed that, too, as they've returned him to his original position of shortstop in Triple-A. Miller has spent his entire career in pitchers' parks, so it'd be really interesting to see what he could do if the Brewers gave him something close to a time gig, whether it's at short or second. Mixed league value could still be a possibility here. Holding off another challenge from Oda, Hunter Strickland cemented his status as MLB's biggest meathead by breaking his hand while punching a wall after a blown save Monday, putting him out for 6 to 8 weeks. It opens the door for Mark Melancon to reclaim his job, but his velocity remains down and he's not getting as many grounders as usual. Meanwhile, Sam Dyson has a 1.38 ERA in his last 26 appearances and seems like the superior option at the moment. He's the one to pick up, though he might lose the occasional opportunity to Tony Watson. Franchy Cordero's unfortunate setback with his elbow lifts a bit of the fog from the Padres' crowded outfield situation. Will Myers' oblique should come off the DL within a few days and return to right field, leaving 2 spots per night for Manuel Margot, Travis Jankowski, Hunter Renfroe and Franmil Reyes. It seemed a few weeks ago that Margot might be the odd man out, but HES up to .326, .396, .442 in 43 at-bats this month. Meanwhile, Jankowski and Reyes have slumped badly. If I'm the Padres, I send Reyes down, play Margot regularly in center and platoon Jankowski and Renfroe in left. I'm not sure that's the way the team will handle it, but it seems a more likely scenario than it did at the beginning of the month. J.P. Crawford's broken hand gives Maikel Franco one last chance, presumably in Philadelphia. I didn't like the Phillies' whole approach there anyway. Sure, Crawford should be a terrific defensive third baseman in theory, but if he wasn't good enough to outplay Scott Kingery at shortstop, then he wasn't worth playing at all. It made little sense for the Phillies to keep starting both of them at the same time as poorly as they've hit. Franco's oddly low BABIPs have his career on life support. Someone with his solid power and modest strikeout rate 14% this year should be a quality hitter, yet Franco simply hasn't been. He has a .242 BABIP this year after coming in at .234 last year. He's been nearly 60 points off the league average. One would think that can't hold up forever.